So welcome again to our class here. Appreciate you all coming out tonight and taking some time. Those of you who care to know, Dr. Marconi is on the mend, and we expect him back in the saddle in about, what, 5 or 6 weeks? Yeah. So he had some elective surgery, and he's fine. He's home. He's resting. So as I've said in previous classes here, one of the most important things for all of you guys is to remember is it's a people business. And you meet people along the way. Some of them are just coworkers, some become friends, and some become acquaintances. But it's all about the people. So I think I forgot that once. I was gainfully employed at Universal Music, and the opportunity came to work at another company, and I kind of thought the challenge might be interesting. So I jumped ship and went over to what was then being a retooled, relaunched Virgin Records. And Virgin had been a West Coast-based label, and the owners at the time, EMI, had decided to try relaunching it as an East Coast label for East Coast presence. Probably not the best career move in my checkered career, but there are some positives to come out of it, and one of them you'll see tonight. So when I was working there, I was fortunate enough to meet tonight's guest, and here was a young man who was saddled with heading sales for Virgin Records. Okay, we had a couple of things that might have been chart worthy. He used to come into the meeting with stacks, reams of paper of sales figures, and with no help. It was like his responsibility to explain to the rest of the company or answer the questions of why this wasn't selling here or why this was selling there. And I was like, wow, that's back in the day when people actually bought physical goods, that's a tough job. Anyway, so I was fortunate enough to meet at the time the head of sales at Virgin Records, who now has reemerged as the CEO of PledgeMusic, which will be the focus of tonight's discussion. His name is Dominic Pandiscia, and he was kind enough to give up his evening and come here and talk to you guys and share some information about a pretty exciting platform that well, you'll see. But I wanted to start, now I'm talking, because I always think it's helpful for you guys to understand how people got where they are. He just didn't wake up one morning and go, hey, I'm going to be the head of sales at Virgin Records, or hey, I'm going to be the CEO of PledgeMusic, because obviously he paid his dues and started, I learned tonight he even had a band. So, and there's some connection actually here at Willie P. But this is my friend Dominic Pandiscia, and I thought maybe perhaps you could start by telling us how you got sucked into this crazy business.
Sure. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? I think probably like everyone in this room, this business was a calling for me. And it sounds crazy, but I'm a guitar player. I still write songs. I'm in a project with friends of mine, and I love doing it because it's a passion of mine. But when I was a very young kid and first started playing guitar, taking guitar lessons, I have 2 younger brothers, and we always used to play shopkeeper, and I always had the record store. When I was 8 years old, I had the record store. So I always knew that I was fascinated with the business of music. I love music. It's a passion, obviously. And, fast forward to playing in bands through college, and as Steve mentioned, my bass player at the time was a student here, and we became the guinea pig band in the studio. So we have like a 6-song EP that we recorded in the studio on campus here years ago. I went to Montclair State. And we had a lot of fun doing that here. So, to kind of give you the cliff notes on how I wound up where I am, if someone were to do a Harvard Business Review study on how to be a CEO of anything, I would be the anti-story. My resume does not in any way indicate I should be a CEO of anything. I was an English major in college, a minor in psychology. My intent at the time was to just have a great library when I got out of school, but music was always my beacon. And I worked in a record store when my last 2 years of college, and I decided to do an internship at Simon & Schuster my last 6 months. Thought I had some interest in book publishing, and I realized it was not for me. So when I was getting close to graduation, I went back to my store manager and said, look, do you know anybody in the music business who needs help? So he gave me the name of someone at EMI Records who was a regional sales guy at the time. I sent one resume out before I graduated, and I decided I was going to take the summer off and try and make it as a musician and with my buddies. And I said, I have one resume out there, I'm just going to keep calling. I'll call once a week, and I kept getting the don't call us, we'll call you, like the whole cliche that you've heard a million times. And one day they called. And his name was Joe, and he said, look, I'm looking for someone to go hang posters in record stores and do inventory and run marketing campaigns, and I'll pay you $200 a week, plus expenses, no benefits. You're like a paid intern. And that was my entree into the music business. And my very first day on the job, I worked with Richard Marx, who was a big artist at that point, and then 2 weeks later, I brought the Red Hot Chili Peppers to Tower Lincoln Center on the Mother's Milk record to do a big signing there, and it validated everything I had hoped the music business could be for me. So that was really my starting point. And I was at EMI Records for about 9 months in New York. Then I moved to Washington, D.C. For 18 months in another role. At that point, cassette singles were a big deal, so I wound up driving all the sales for cassette singles across the Mid-Atlantic region, and then with Capital EMI. Then I moved back to New York as a regular, full-blown sales rep for 4 years for Capital EMI Music. And then really the big career pivot for me was when I moved to the label side, which is the more creative side of the business, and that was in 1995. And that's where I guess the genesis of how my path crossed with Steve. I was recruited to come into Virgin Records, and I started off as a regional salesperson, became a national salesperson, moved to Los Angeles, lived there for 4 years, and from that point in my career, really started to move closer and closer to the creative side of the business, but also closer to understanding what was important to artists, because you're closer to artists at a label than you are at a distribution service company. And that really became my true calling, which is how I wound up at PledgeMusic. So, to fast forward from my time at Virgin Records, when Virgin was moved back to New York, that's where Steve and I met. And I wound up running the whole commercial team for Virgin. Capital and Virgin merged at some point. I oversaw that whole commercial team. Anything that generated revenue for the company was something was under my remit. And then I was given an opportunity to take over a company called Caroline in 2008. And if those of you know Caroline, it's an independent service company. Caroline is a legendary company, 35 years old now. Artists like Ben Folds 5 and the Smashing Pumpkins and Rob Zombie and countless others, Chemical Brothers, were born of the Caroline system as an artist development engine with a lot of independent labels and artists. And then Virgin was the sister company, so Caroline would develop these artists, and at certain points, like the Smashing Pumpkins, they would be graduated from Caroline into Virgin, and I was there when that happened for the Smashing Pumpkins. I saw many other artists go through that process. So to have the opportunity to go in and actually run Caroline was an amazing opportunity for me. So I moved into that role in 2008, did that for 2 years, turned the company around. At that point, I'd been losing a lot of money. I got very lucky pretty quickly and brought in artists like Twista and Bobby V and Slash and a number of other independent artists and labels, and helped turn the company around. I was then approached about moving into an EMI North America role, not to bore you completely to tears, but that role was at a very critical point in the history of EMI, which is now owned by Universal, because we were in the middle of a pretty hostile takeover by someone who didn't understand the music business. An investment fund didn't understand the music business. And those of us that did understand the music business had to balance that lack of knowledge with our knowledge of how to execute and deliver on behalf of artists. And had the privilege to work with artists like Katy Perry, et cetera, right from day one, and protect them from a lot of the mayhem that was going on at the company at the time. And in the EMI North America role, I had to oversee all the branding business and the music sync placement business, so songs that got placed in TV commercials and films and ads. I oversaw all the commercial strategy for the labels and the distribution company. And it was a great learning curve for me to really start to understand how many ways fans could engage with music and how many ways we can reward them, and how artists can become closer to their fans if they're smart about how they manage their business aside from their creative piece. I was also at that point involved. I brokered the Beatles iTunes deal that brought all that repertoire to the iTunes platform years ago, which was a real amazing moment in my career. Fast forward to I guess it was about 2010 maybe, when Universal Music Group purchased EMI. And here you have the biggest music company in the world getting bigger by purchasing the smallest major in the world. So after 2 years at EMI North America, I was asked by the folks at Universal to go back to Caroline and build it out aggressively globally. So I jumped at that opportunity. It was a passion of mine, and went back into Caroline. And Caroline is, again, a company that is focused on artist rights and empowering artists, where artists can retain, independent labels can retain the rights, but can leverage all of the marketing and promotion resource that a major can support an artist with. So it was a real kind of balancing act where you would have independent artists that would retain their own recorded music rights, but we could flex into the folks at Capitol for radio promotion or for other services. So it was the sweet spot of kind of protecting the independent rights, but giving them all the resource they needed to break on the scale as any other artist. And I did that for 3 years, and the last year in that seat as president of Caroline was 2015. We had 4 #1 albums: Alabama Shakes, All Time Low, Tyrese, and Five Finger Death Punch, 4 different genres. We record market share and profit for the company that year. And it was the late 2015, after that incredible run, I left the company to start my own company, Sunday Artist, and proceeded to consult a number of artists and labels. I did the music strategy for the Discovery Channel film Racing Extinction, which was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Song. Lost to Sam Smith, the James Bond film, but we kind of expected that. And really got involved in some other things I hadn't had the chance to before for years on the record, purely the record side of the business. And that really brings me to the moment that PledgeMusic revealed itself to me. And it was, I guess, I started April 1st of last year, so it was around fall of 2016, or 2015 rather, that I was approached about PledgeMusic needing someone to come in and run the company. And to be frank, I didn't know much about it. I perceived them as a crowdfunding platform, never used them at Caroline or at any point in my career prior to that. I kind of had a shoulder shrug and said to myself, well, you know what, I'll go have a conversation. There's no such thing as a wasted conversation ever in any business. I would encourage everyone in the room, when you have an opportunity, take it. You'll meet someone, it may be a good fit for you, it may not, but always take the opportunity to have a conversation. So within 15 minutes of that first meeting with the board, my blood started pumping. And I'm saying to myself, I can't believe that this was not on my radar in my previous life. And I'm looking around this conference room of Wall Street guys and saying to myself, these are really smart people, but they have no idea how big this business could be. They've rescued the business from distress, financial distress. They have the right intentions, and they're looking for someone to really get their arms around this and try and make it great. And I was really trying to decide at that point, do I continue building my own company? And I had my own checklist of, if I'm going to go work for a company again, what would it need to be? And this checked those 3 boxes for me. Number one, who do I want to be in the foxhole with? I knew I had the air cover of the people behind the business to really support what it needed. Number 2, can I learn something / build something? And this certainly checked that box for me. And the 3rd box for me, which I think is maybe the most important one, is would I do it for nothing? Now, we all have to earn a living, but I wanted to put myself in a situation where I would get up and do it every day because I loved it. And as I went through that mental checklist, this revealed itself to me in a way that made it undeniable to come into PledgeMusic. And to really just set the table on what PledgeMusic is, and it sounds like you guys have done some homework on it, which is great, but PledgeMusic occupies a space in the market that no one else does. If you've read any of Blue Ocean Strategy, which is one of my favorite business books, or Purple Cow by Seth Godin, talks about carve your own lane, basically. Create something where there's a very low competition level and be great at it. And PledgeMusic is that. PledgeMusic is all about creating a marketplace where passionate fans and artists connect. It decommoditizes the music business. And I'm of the belief that as time goes on and we move even more squarely into a purely digital age, it's not very, very gratifying for a passionate fan to click play to listen to music. We immerse ourselves in the music, but there's a much more rewarding way. I would assume everyone in this room has 1, 2, 5, 10 artists you're really passionate about, and my guess is you probably don't get enough from that artist. You would love to engage them more, you would love to have more experiences, you would love to have more products to engage with. We help create that relationship between the artist and the fan, so both sides are rewarded. in a way that they're not getting through Amazon or iTunes or anybody else.
You got a question?
Say again?
The books. He wanted you to
Oh
repeat
yeah,
the title.
Blue Ocean Strategy. I highly recommend reading that book. And there's some amazing case studies in there, like Yellowtail Wine, which carved a lane and now basically the premise of the Yellowtail Wine story is that they kind of did the reverse math on the fact that the average person walks into a wine store to put wine on the table for a dinner party and they're overwhelmed. They don't want to spend too much money. They don't want to put a cheap bottle of wine on the table. So Yellowtail basically curated a marketing message that addressed that segment of the market and cornered it. So that's a blue ocean strategy. No one else was doing that, and they cornered the market. So, and the other book is Purple Cow by Seth Godin, who actually came in and spoke. I had him come in and speak to our staff last year.
Wow.
Again, both kind of variations on the theme is be a purple cow, be be in a place that no one else occupies, and the blue ocean analogy is why compete in the red ocean where so many different companies are competing for the same business. Create your own ocean, create your blue ocean.
I just wanted to add, even though you all have submitted questions and stuff, I would like to be, this class to be a little participatory. And so there's a microphone here where you can stand up. So feel free to, raise your hand, ask a question, something to understand, or you wanted something repeated, because like I said, I don't want it to be Dominic and I just sitting up here for the next whatever and, telling stories and stuff. I'd like feedback and some participation. I don't think it's just a lecture class. I think it's a class where there's some participation. You'll get more out of it that way. Sorry, I interrupted your chain here.
No, it's all good. So I mean, I think that kind of sets the table. And I think in any business, and I believe this in the music business, and I believe in PledgeMusic for this reason, I think it's always important to ask yourself, where is there a need in the business? Where is there a need that has to be addressed? And PledgeMusic really does that for the fan and the artist. It occupies a space no one else is in, but it addresses a really pressing need, which is that fan wanting to have a more enriching experience with their favorite artists, and the artist wanting to understand who that fan is more so. That's their career fan. That's not their casual fan that's only going to be there if they have a hit. That's a fan that's there for their career, that's there at every show. So we help both sides of the conversation in a way that no one else is doing.
So how do you feel that when you were running Caroline, that prepared you for your current role? Because there you were the decision maker whether to sign or pick up a master or license something. You were there who, what resources or money do we put behind this as opposed to that? I mean, you were basically running a record company for EMI and eventually Universal. I mean, there's not too many. You can count on, your hands and toes. The number of people that have that opportunity and have done that successfully. And as you pointed out, you had 4 number ones before you left there. I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary feat for. I mean, and those are not, taking an existing artist and those were brand new situations or things that had been around for a while that never happened. I mean, so I don't want to just gloss over that, and not to diminish what you're doing today, but I want people to understand how the heaviosity of that, and then how that prepared you for what you do now.
I think the word that comes to mind when you ask that is empathy. And it sounds like a crazy thing to say, but the record business, like many businesses, is cutthroat. It's absolutely cutthroat. There are a lot of agendas, there's a lot of politics, and every business is like that. A mutual friend of ours once described the record business as like high school with money, which I think is true. But I had an epiphany, being an artist myself, being a musician, being someone who never lost that passion for the music, to really understand that, guys like Steve and I, through our careers in the music business, we've had a portfolio of repertoire to build a business plan from and try and achieve our goals, which is great. Every one of these artists has one career. That's all they got. Everything is riding on that career. And I think a lot of people in the business lose sight of that fact. So that became my beacon as my career progressed. And I really tried to develop teams that were sensitive to that. Not every record's a hit. Great records sometimes aren't hits. Bad records sometimes are. That's part of the magic and the fairy dust that happens in the music business. You never really know. We have more research now than ever before, but you never really know until you give the fan a chance to vote yes or no. But the point is, every one of these artists has one career, and you've got to be very respectful of that, and make sure they feel the energy of you as the team they've chosen to support that career. Win, lose, or draw, you're there with them because it's all they've got. So that was really important for me, Steve, as a beacon as my career progressed.
I mean, your background as a musician sort of made you very sensitive to that. And I think about the executives in the music industry right now, and there aren't many that were actually musicians or came from that background as you did, or even counting me. I mean, I know Doug Morris, chairman of Sony, is a musician. He was and he's a songwriter. And I know Clive Davis feigns to be some sort of musician type, but there's very few people. And I think that probably gave you an advantage and helped you achieve, because these guys are out there with big chunks of money, and they had nuclear missiles, and you had, some rubber bands, paper clips, and a small budget. But look what you did, you had 4 number ones. I think that's an amazing feat, and it's kudos for being able to pull that off in that environment. And so that obviously prepared you to see the advantage of this new platform that you were intrigued by.
Yeah, that's exactly right in terms of setting the table for PledgeMusic for me. And when I look at, you're always in any business, you've got to trust your instincts and read the tea leaves as much as you can. Like, where's the business going? How do you stay 5 minutes ahead as opposed to trying to catch up to it? And the music business moves really fast. So when I really looked at this opportunity, I said to myself, there's this company that's been banging around for 7 years, started as a crowdfunding platform. It's kind of like this clunky thing that can't be killed. It's making money every day, but it's not profitable, and the idea is great, but it's not been talked about the right way. And I thought to myself, if this could only be framed in the right way to the trade, they would have the same epiphany that I had. And that's that, at the end of the day, and this is really, to me, goes to the core of where I think the challenge in the music business lies, and it's great for artists, it's not so great for companies, is that artists have more choices than ever. And every time I'm in a combative conversation with a record company about should we do a pledge campaign or not, I always ask them the same question. I said, what's the biggest threat to your business? And everyone says, well, YouTube doesn't pay us enough, or the CPMs at a Spotify, or this. And I said, you're talking about the battles. What war are you about to face? And when they stumble on that, my answer is always your relationship with your artist, because that artist has more choices than ever to release their repertoire. You have to define your value proposition and redefine it every day to retain that relationship with the artist. And the reality is, when the artist looks at PledgeMusic, they're generating more revenue. We transacted $55 a head with music. That's unheard of. Most people don't spend $60 on music in a year. Every transaction averages $55 with us. So we're transacting at a much higher level. We're marketing our repertoire that's in our system to 3 million fans that may or may not be in your social media spheres. There's a lot of discovery that goes on. A third of the revenue, literally 33% on the button, comes from our user base. So when Melissa Etheridge does a campaign, in her case, over 40% of the revenue on the campaign came from our users that may not have known there was a Melissa Etheridge record coming out. We delivered that message. So as we're in that conversation with artists and managers, they understand what we do. So when I get a record company that pushes back, I said, you understand, do you want to be the speed bump that's going to prohibit your artists from accessing this type of revenue? And by the way, data, because they get all the CRM data. They get all the information on those fans because we think it's important for them to know who that core fan is. And that becomes the moment of fear that I think the labels start to really feel. It's like, wait a minute, these artists and labels are going to know about what's going on here, and you're right, we should be facilitating that relationship rather than trying to block it, because it's not good for us long term if we do.
So I guess we should take a look at the website so we can really understand, because you're telling us what it can do, but I don't know if everybody here has had any experience, and hopefully some of you walk out of here tonight with your head spinning and going, wow, didn't know that. Because I know the first time Dom told me about this, I was like, huh? And then I was like, wow, there's opportunities up the yin-yang. So
sure, I can go to the computer.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So just a disclaimer on this visual. So I'm sure all of you know about South by Southwest. It's coming up in 2 weeks. We have a big, kind of big bang moment happening at South by Southwest. We're announcing 5 things. We have 4 days of day parties, Tuesday through Friday. We've got Pledge Porch events, and I can go into detail on some of that stuff if you'd like to hear about it. But one of the 5 things we're announcing is a complete reboot of the platform, because one of the things I really felt when you see the homepage, and maybe you've looked at it already, the homepage was almost built by accident because it started as a crowdfunding platform. Fans would be prompted to fund an artist through their socials. We had to send them somewhere after they transacted with that crowdfunding campaign, so we had to build a homepage, and hopefully they discovered something else. So it's been this, kind of clunky but functional, application right now. But we're launching a completely new homepage for South by Southwest. Whoops. I obviously failed typing in college.
You have other skills.
I was an English major. I would bang out term papers at like 3 a.m. the morning before they were due, like nobody's business.
You guys don't know anything about that. Of course not.
Not that I'm advocating that. So, it's loading. So this is our new logo. We just launched that. We worked with the company that, the agency that did the reboot of the Mini Cooper when it was relaunched in the U.S. They also worked with Harley Davidson and David Gierman and others. And we really thought long and hard, weeks of kind of understanding of what is our ethos, what do we represent to the fan, to the artist. So love music, pledge music is our new kind of slogan. That's our new logo. And just to telegraph, I have variations of that logo for books, film, TV, and sports. So eventually, as the music business matures, we're going to launch Pledge Film, Pledge TV, Pledge Books, and Pledge Sports, because we think that super fan engagement is relevant to those businesses and many others. So what we do, and I guess I'll open up Willie Nelson. So this is in partnership with Sony. We basically take the idea of a release and explode it. So here you've got all these different ways that the fan can engage in pre-ordering the new Willie Nelson project. And Sony came to us because, well, for a lot of reasons, but Willie's never had a #1 album. And their view was, because of our platform, we can get to that fan and really hype them and give him way more ways to engage his new release that can really help drive chart position. So we're trying to make a push for #1 for Willie Nelson. So every one of these fans that may purchase something from us would have the option to buy a download from iTunes for $10, or stream it on Spotify, or buy a CD from Amazon, or buy a vinyl from an indie store. We basically give them ways to spend more and engage more robustly with with Willie. And right now we've just crossed $100,000 today on this campaign in 3 weeks. Trying to think of here's a campaign that I really love. This is a rock band that we did. This is one of the initiatives we're going to be launching around South by, as an expansive live campaign. This is a band called Bring Me the Horizon, which is a rock band. They played Royal Albert Hall April of last year. I'll show you a little clip of this video. We have every artist deliver a video to us to kind of introduce the campaign. Now, some artists just want to talk, some want to talk about their projects, some want to have studio footage, some want to just perform. So this is the Royal Albert Hall piece that we captured. And here again is a way that we exploded this into a number of different ways for that fan to engage. And this is all about the core fan. Casual fans generally don't care about live projects. This campaign has done over $400,000. We launched it in September of last year. And just to frame that number for you, that is a staggering revenue number for a live album in the marketplace that we live in right now.
What is their past success? Has been,
They're a middling rock band. They've had top 10 active rock singles.
they haven't had a top 10 album.
They've not had a top 10 album. It is a band with a very passionate fan base. And again, that fan base, if the label and artist allow them to, could say, okay, I'll buy the live album. I'll pay $10 for that on iTunes. I'm good. Or I'll stream it on Spotify. Or maybe they'd pay £80 for that amazing vinyl, that piece you see on the far right. And they're proving they're voting with their dollars. They want more. Let's deliver more to them. Let's feed that beast that the superfan has an appetite for more.
What label are they signed to?
It depends on the territory. This is not a major. It's an independent label.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this is a split right deal. I can't remember what labels they're split across. It's two different labels, U.S. and U.K.
Any fans of this band here in the room? So were you aware of this campaign?
No.
Now you are.
So just to elaborate on that, so every one of these campaigns, I want to talk about another project in a minute, and I can take you into the weeds on a lot of these, but here's a perfect example. So you're a Bring Me the Horizon fan. So what we ask the artists to do is to promote the PledgeMusic campaign, just like they would promote their Apple Music link or their Amazon link or any other driver. And when that happens, a fan would engage into the campaign much like they would engage with all those platforms. We also take the same campaign and push it to our 3 million users. That's why there's so much discovery. We subdivide our users to know who are the rock fans in our database that might care about Bring Me the Horizon. In this case, 40% of the revenue came from our user base. That's a lot of people that would have never known that there was a Bring Me the Horizon live project out. So out of $400,000, 40% of that came from our users that may not have transacted with Bring Me the Horizon. So when you look at things like, as a fan of this band, when you look at things like their social media feed, and this is one of the real struggles I have with the music business, is everyone high-fives when there's a post about something and it's like, oh, we got 5 likes, or we got 5,000 likes, or 50,000 likes. That's not a transaction. What we do is we attach the option to transact every step along the way for an artist. So when Bring Me the Horizon, if we started that campaign as a pre-order, and that video didn't get introduced till December, by the way. So we launched this in November, or rather September, talking about the project. That video didn't go up until December. We did $50,000 in one day when that video went up, because it was fed as an Access Pass update through our campaign with the prompt to click in to purchase. So we monetize those social media updates as opposed to people just putting them up and then high-fiving because they got however many likes they got. That's not a commerce environment. Attaching the right products and experiences to those updates is really where the sweet spot is. And we have to educate the business about this, because I had this debate with someone the other day. I said, we don't need artwork and track listing to start a pre-order. When your artist is going in the studio, let's do the studio-only package. Just while I'm recording this record for the next 3 weeks, there's a handwritten picture of a mixing board, and you can pre-order. You get that hand-drawn picture of a mixing board and a T-shirt. You can pre-order the vinyl and download, and I'll handwrite 2 lines from one song. None of it has to be delivered yet. So a fan might say, I definitely want that. There's only 300. I'm paying $250 for that. Then when the artwork is delivered, that's an update. So here's the artwork that repopulates the campaign. Then we introduce a limited edition lithograph of that artwork signed by the artist. That's another thing you might buy for $85. So all along the way, we're putting great things in front of that core fan because they want it. And that's how we're driving so much revenue.
Amazing.
I'm going to show you a campaign now that will prove that my days as a record guy are over, because I would never have forecasted this in my career. Many of you, maybe all of you, know who Weird Al Yankovic is. He's got a long career, 14 albums worth of parody records. We launched this campaign in partnership with Sony the second week of January. It is a comprehensive box set. I'll just show you a bit of this video clip. So there's this really cute video that scrolls through all of his albums, and then we have another video clip where he doesn't want to talk to anybody, so we found this crazy super fan that has a massive Weird Al Yankovic collection. We went to his garage, and this guy's like showing us all this memorabilia. That's all captured on here, like fascinating lifestyle stuff. So the point is, we launched this campaign in January. You can see all the different ways the fan can engage on this. It's not being released until November. Today, we crossed $980,000 in revenue. We're going to be at $1 million by the weekend on a box set that's not being released until November. This will be a $2 million, maybe more, $2 million campaign. So it's packaged in a super deluxe accordion box set. This, by the way, the highest priced item on the entire page is our best selling item, the $475 package. It's packaged in a mock accordion. So here you have Sony. If they were going to try and release this general market, I've been in those meetings where they got the abacus out, they're trying to figure out what are we going to sell, how do we not get burned on returns, can we get an exclusive somewhere, they're trying to figure out where we're going to stick this thing. Meanwhile, we've gone right to the fan base, we're at $1 million in a week, or rather in a month. They're recouped. Every unit we sell from this point forward is profit for them. And one of the battlefields we had with them, and thank God for some of the smart people on my staff, test pressings of vinyl. Vinyl we know is hot right now. Test pressings are the absolute hottest item no matter who the artist is on our platform. Sony did not want to allow us to do test pressings. So we did an end around and went right to the manager and said, trust us. You don't have to make it until November. If we sell 5, we just tell people that we decided that it's no longer available and we don't make them. Let us get our arms around this. He goes, okay, I'll give you 27 sets, because there's some math on the manufacturing, the 27, because it's 14 to 15 albums in here. So we pushed them to do it. Sony reluctantly agreed. This was the first thing to sell out in the campaign. In 6 hours, we sold $40,000 in test pressings. We sold every one of them out in 6 hours. Because again, you have to think like a fan. I'm not a Weird Al fan. I never would have projected this. Now, if this were Ryan Adams, I could sit here and tell you everything I want. I had this argument with his manager 2 weeks ago in LA. I said, give me a reason to spend $400 on Ryan's album, because I would. You're not giving me the opportunity to. You'll let me download it on iTunes, you'll let me stream it on Spotify, you'll let me buy vinyl from Amoeba, you'll let me buy a t-shirt from his website. You're not creating a package that I will pay. If you can't take my money fast enough for the right package. Help me do that as a fan. That's what we do. And you can see it's relevant to a newish rock band. It's relevant to a legacy artist and Willie Nelson as a country artist. It's relevant to a catalog artist who's not active anymore in Weird Al Yankovic.
How does the revenue share with the record label and Weird Al?
So this is one of the real advantages to, I believe, to this platform. If you know the economics, you know most platforms like Apple keep 30% of the revenue. We keep 15%. So the artist keeps 85% of the revenue, the IP owner, the label, whoever it is, keeps 85% of the revenue. We keep 15%. And with our 15%, you're getting a whole ecosystem of people around the project. And you know, you get people that market it to social media. Our average return on investment, every dollar we spend on Facebook advertising, we get 8 or 9 back. Our newsletter has a 25% open rate. If you have any sense of what open rates are in email marketing, if you ring the bell at 6%, you're high-fiving. We're 25% because people have such an appetite, because we know we're an authentic source of content and access and great artist experiences.
How many of those things that in the Weird Al space does Sony have participation in versus how much of it goes directly to the artist/manager?
So generally speaking, in Weird Al's case, I believe this is true, they have rights to the audio package. So Sony's not claiming rights to the t-shirt, or they're getting a piece of it because it's the album art, but so they're not getting rights to the poster necessarily or the t-shirt. And what we do to help facilitate that relationship is we'll pay any rights holder directly. So if we have bundles that the record company only has the rights to the audio, but the artist added all these other things to, we'll pay the record company directly for their portion of it to kind of de-stress the entire conversation. And the interesting thing about it is, and not to go too far in the weeds, but you know, if you sell a download on iTunes for $10, generally the wholesale price you get as a record company is $7, and the artist gets their royalty rate of 18% or whatever it is off of that. In our case, if you sell that same download for $10, even if it's part of a bundle, you keep $8.50 as a record company. We keep 15%. So the economics are better with us. So you're making more money, whether you're a record company or the artist. You're getting all the fan data. Weird Al's camp will know everyone, will have the profile of every one of the artists, or the fans rather, that purchased from this campaign to market to directly in the future. And the fan feels more rewarded. They have amazing ways to interact with this project, which they couldn't do through Amazon or anybody else.
So what would be the pushback from a record label not wanting their artist to do something like this?
It's a few things. It takes work. One of my favorite quotes is a friend of mine who's one of the more notable music business attorneys. He goes, when I negotiate with a record company, I'm not anti-record company, by the way. I believe there's absolutely a place for record companies. I grew up in record companies. But he has a great quote about record companies as an attorney. He said, whenever I start a negotiation for a deal, I say, whatever you're going to put in front of me, I'm getting a third of. The record company usually responds and says, well, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, every employee at a record company, a third of the time they're working, a third of the time they're gossiping, a third of the time they're trying to find another job. So I'm getting a third of whatever you put in front of me. So when it comes to our conversation with record companies, we have to force them to think differently about their business. They've gotten very used to a very rote, let's check the box of, okay, well, we got this update out and we got 2,800 likes. Woo, that's great in a marketing meeting. And we got, what's our playlist strategy and what's our, and all those things have to happen. But it's really hard to rattle a record company out of their rote way of doing business. This is a different way to think about your business. This product's not even going to be made until August. We could have launched this without any artwork and still probably done almost the same number and then introduced the artwork as an update. So you have to force them to think differently. So that's the biggest hurdle, Steve, to answer your question. The second biggest hurdle that I think record companies, and this is insipid across record companies, is they try and do things that they're not good at. And my argument with them, even when I was in one, was like, why don't we just be a great record company? Let's be a great marketing company. Let's advocate for our artists. Like, why do we have to try and jump into all these other businesses that we probably are going to suck at? And it's caused a lot of friction in the music business because you have record companies asserting rights against content they really don't have an expertise to monetize. Wait, we got merch rights. Well, we don't really know what to do with merch. But we strong-armed an artist to get their merch rights, but now the artist is pissed because they're not earning from that because the record company doesn't have expertise in it. So this is, again, affects PledgeMusic. There are record companies that believe that they can do a direct-to-fan business. And direct-to-fan business is complicated. There's not a lot of money in it unless you're really good and really smart. And you can't do it halfway. But because they've done a lot of rights grabbing, they believe they can go out and launch these direct-to-fan campaigns. But even in that case, they're handcuffed because they can only speak to their tribe. So Lady Gaga launches a direct-to-fan campaign. That can't be cross-marketed to Katy Perry fans. That would be bad. You can't communicate, especially as a record company. In our case, the umbrella brand is PledgeMusic. So not only can we, these fans have an appetite for discovery. So when you see an artist like Melissa Etheridge, where over 40% of her sales came from our user base, that's way more than she would have earned by just doing it on her own or doing it through a record company. So
how do you draw people to the website? Are you relying mainly on the artist to bring their fans to it, or because I personally never heard of it, but it seems you have a great customer base. So how do you bring people?
So we've done 50,000 campaigns in 7 years. It's a great question, by the way. There's never been a dollar of advertising marketing push on the platform spent. That's going to change when I relaunch it in 2 weeks. But it's all been organic. It's been artists promoting their PledgeMusic campaign. We then absorb that fan data. We start populating the homepage with more offerings. There are more PledgeMusic campaigns that launch. We start aggregating this fan data, and it becomes word of mouth. So we've actually built this empire organically by working closely with artists and labels to aggregate the fan base. So that's how it's been built. It's never been promoted outside of an organic approach.
So are you saying that in 2 weeks it will be more publicly announced?
So in 2 weeks, we're announcing 5 strategic developments around the business. The rebirth of the homepage is going to be one of them, and it's going to look and feel very different. We're going to weave in fan interaction. We want to play a little bit of hero ball. Fans love super fans. Always think they're the biggest super fan in the world. We want to kind of shine a light on that. So So say you're the first fan to purchase something from 311. Maybe we're going to give you 5 questions with 311 that we're going to publish in our newsletter or on our blog or on our homepage. So we're going to relaunch the homepage right before South by Southwest. We're announcing, as I showed you on the Bring Me the Horizon, a unilateral live initiative where we bought a company last year called SetFM, which allows the artist to capture live content through their device or through their laptop. We're partnering with Live Here Now, which did that Bring Me the Horizon campaign. So an artist can now capture live recordings very elegantly and cheaply through a technology on their laptop or device from their bedroom through Stadium. So we're announcing a live solution for the business. They want to capture live recordings, we can help them do that. We're announcing a white label D2C business called PM Stores. So pledge campaigns by design are limited. So we'll pop a campaign, it'll be live for 6, 8, 12 weeks, and then we'll pull the campaign down. We want to create that market of urgency and scarcity where there's only 25 of this, there's only 300 of that, and super fans want to be the first. They want to get that first colored vinyl. They want to get that first 25 of the handwritten lyric sheet. So we create a market with scarcity. So pledge campaigns live in that lane, but PM Stores will power an artist's day-to-day D2C store. So your 5 T-shirts and your vinyl gift or vinyl bag and your audio catalog. So we're going to launch that. The other 2 things we're launching at South by will be something called the self-serve model. We have a lot of unsigned artists that come to our platform. It's about a $5 million business for us every year. These are artists that come to the platform cold that can sign up to get a pledge campaign. We have some unsigned artists doing $30,000 and $40,000 campaigns because they're really great at working their fan base and their socials. So we're going to make it easier for unsigned artists to come onto the platform by building their own stores. And then the last piece is we're announcing a whole emerging artist strategy called Amplify, where we're going to, once a quarter, have a committee of people in the music business. I may ask Steve to join that committee, actually, as I'm sitting here, to vote, have artists, we have to fill out a submission form. We're going to have a committee of a board of folks that will review which artists we want to adopt into our emerging artist strategy. We'll pick 5 a quarter to really over-index on pushing across our platforms. We're talking to a brand to come in and actually match dollar for dollar. Every dollar that's driven out of the campaign, they would match. They would fund showcases. So there's a whole idea we have around supporting, nurturing developing artists. We're going to be announcing all of these 5 things. I know it's a mouthful in Austin in 2 weeks.
Wow.
What is keeping an Apple Music, for example, from just doing the same thing? You know, does that ever worry you, or do you have it down so well that they can't do it?
You know, it's a good question. I think that the interesting thing about Pledge Music is it combines a lot of different ideas under one umbrella. You know, companies do D2C. There's not a lot of money to be made in direct-to-fan business, generally speaking. We do that as well. You know, companies do, have a way to capture live recordings. We do that too. So, but the point is, there's an umbrella idea here with all of these, initiatives. But the real golden goose is the pledge campaign. It is the most simple idea, but it's the most difficult one for people to try and get their arms around, is the notion of scarcity. Because the music business tends to be push and make it available as wide as you possibly can and try and get the most people on the bus. But the reality is, your easiest target is a smaller, more select group of fans that are willing to pay more and respond to scarcity. And the technology, it's all proprietary. We have our own developers, our own product team. It's really hard to build. So could Google, could YouTube, could Pandora, could Live Nation? Absolutely. But I think we want to keep moving the business forward. So you could potentially choose to go do a pledge campaign if Google builds it, but then wait a minute, we're doing all these other things too. Why would you need to leave this ecosystem? You know, so really we're trying to stay ahead of anybody that may try and catch up to us, because the pledge music business is the purple cow, is the blue ocean. When we start complementing that with other things, we kind of become a turnkey solution for a lot of problems in the business.
It's fascinating to watch the happening now, the actual transactions that are going on.
Yeah.
Can you show us a little bit about Erasure? Because I know that's an upcoming project that's not out yet.
So here's an amazing story. So Erasure, we've done, this is our 3rd campaign with them.
You guys know who Erasure is, right? No?
So that video is going to be supplemented as we move through the campaign. This is our third Erasure campaign inside of probably 15 months or so. We started off by doing a vinyl reissue campaign, did $140,000 on that. We launched a career box set last October. We did 100,000 pounds in revenue. That's roughly $130,000 in the first 12 hours that went live. We started to aggregate this Erasure fan base. So they came to us to launch their new album. So this album is not going to be released till later this year. These are all the ways that fans can engage. We launched this last Friday. We crossed 100,000 pounds in revenue today already on Erasure. This is a legendary 80s electronic kind of dance-leaning act that has an extremely core cult following, but has a chance to have a moment again, just like if you look at even Daft Punk, they're not that far away from having that type of creative moment again with the right positioning. I do want to show you a campaign just because it's one of my favorites, and I think this speaks to how creative we can really be. Our view is that artists are creative people. They're musicians, obviously, but many of them are into other types of. This campaign is actually closed right now because it ended. I want to show it to you. They're creative people, so they paint, they draw, they write, they do poetry, they make their own clothing. They're creative people. We give them an outlet to really be the full three dimensions of who they are as creatives. So I'm very close with Lyra. Lyra's an artist I had at Caroline. I love her. I think she's going to have a moment, hopefully in the next 18 months, that will be a breakthrough. Nashville singer-songwriter. Her boyfriend / bandmate is Sheryl Crow's steel guitar player. T-Bone Burnett, if you know that producer, legendary producer, took a liking to her. He put her in the last season of HBO's True Detective as the performing artist in the club. And she's a true artist. She follows her creative muse, and she's a brilliant songwriter. So got her into PledgeMusic. This is one of the most creative campaigns I've ever seen. And I'm pissed off because I missed something I wanted to buy in this campaign. It was sold out by the time I got to it. So this is all wrapped around her new album. And by the way, there's no right or wrong pledge campaign. We want the artists to do whatever they're comfortable with. We think there's 8 or 10 things every artist should do, things like test pressings and certain bundles. Some artists like to talk to people, some don't. And it's okay. There's no right or wrong answer. What are you comfortable with? How do you want to reflect yourself to your fans? Because the more true you are to yourself, the more your fans are going to respond to that. So Lyra's a very kind of open artist, and you can see there's everything in here from signed guitars. Here's a Skype songwriting session with her for $1,500. Here's a private show in Europe. There's all sorts of funky merch items. Here's a handwritten lyric sheet for $100. She'll do kind of a knockoff cover song if you were to pay for that, kind of as a goof. I did get the green t-shirt, which I was very happy about. But she's just really creative on what, she loves tea, so she wants that her fans know she loves tea, so why not introduce something related to her lifestyle into this campaign? This is the thing I missed out on, which I still kick myself for. She actually hand drew a number of these of this image, sold for $300 a clip. I think we had 30 of them. They were gone pretty quickly. So the point is, here's original artwork from the CD for $1,000, which she did. So again, she's building a fan base, brilliant songwriter. Whether or not she makes it, the fans will vote at some point. But the point is, here's an artist who's finding a creative way to reward her fans that have been there with her. They feel more bonded to her. We're now promoting this project or have promoted to artists who bought Katie Tunstall and Melissa Etheridge and other female singer-songwriters and folk, alt-country leaning artists. There's a lot of discovery going on. In her case, 47% of the sales came from our user base, which means a lot of discovery. We're helping fans discover Lyra's music. And one of my favorite items here, which we've convinced a lot of other artists to do, I just got to find it, is the camera. Where is it? Went missing from this page because she ran out of it. But anyway, she actually traveled the country with throwaway cameras. So you could buy a camera with 20 pictures taken by Lyra. Here I am in a truck stop in Dallas at 2 a.m. between gigs, or here I am backstage at the Ryman in Nashville. So as a fan, for $150, you can get a download of the album, a vinyl, and a camera with 20 pictures taken by her. You're the only one that has those 20 pictures. Now, you have to put yourselves in the mindset of whoever you're a fan of. And I tell my staff every day, if we're going to be great, you have to come here and think like a fan. That's what's going to make us great, because that's what we have to deliver to our artists every day, is what their fans really want from them.
Are there genre limitations? Or
There are not limitations. There are things that we're good at and there are things that we're not good at. This company's never paid attention really to the urban business, to the country business, to the Christian business, or the Latin business. It's been predominantly a rock, singer-songwriter, metal-led platform. That's all changing. We're launching a big Wu-Tang Clan initiative. I was with that team yesterday in a strategy meeting. We've done projects in all of those genres, but there's so much growth for us by really being aggressive in those genres that we'll be able to do it all.
I think there'd be lots of opportunities, particularly in the urban and the country,
Yes.
and even someday some classical fans
Yes.
and jazz.
It's funny, this is an artist that's, Will Daly's a Boston artist. He was signed to Universal Republic Records. He was in my office a couple of weeks ago. He actually came in, I had met him before, and he came in and he goes, look, I just want to talk to you because are you guys getting too big for us kind of middle-class artists? Because I'm seeing all these big artists on your platform. And I said, Will, understand, like, this is great for you because that's that many more people that we get Willie Nelson fans. We find 4,000 of them that transact with us. We're going to market your record to them. Those people you may not have reached before. So this is all about the middle class. We know we can really drive revenue for an established artist, but for a middle class artist or a developing artist, think of all the people you can reach that you're just trying to do by screaming through your social media hoping to find them. We actually have them. We have passionate super fans that want to discover and want cool stuff.
What is the criteria to be considered to do a campaign?
It's really about engagement. It's not just numbers on social media. There's a lot of falsehoods in social media when you see how many likes an artist has. A lot of those numbers are gamed. It's really about engagement. When you do an update, how many people respond? It's very clinical on our part. Like, we can pretty much forecast within 15-20% of a revenue projection based on engagement. We had one artist who's a very legendary, pop urban leaning artist who shall remain nameless, that, multi-platinum artist that we did not have a great campaign with last year. Like, barely had a comma in it after a week. And when you think of the artist's name, you would think this is going to be a $100,000 campaign in a week. But the reality is, when you started to look at his socials, every time he did an update, he got 28 likes, 54 likes, 12 likes. It wasn't thousands of likes. People were not paying attention. So we really look at engagement. That's why a developing artist, an organic artist as we call them, if they have 500 followers, but every time they update something, 200 people like it, they get a pledge campaign. That's 200 people that are showing that they have an appetite to engage in something really cool from that artist. They might buy a lithograph for $50.
So you would consider an unsigned artist? It's not with a major or indie label?
That's about $5 million a year for our business as unsigned artists.
You mentioned.
Yeah.
So if I work at a record company as an A&R scout, wouldn't it be an interesting way for me to, because the socials can be so manipulated by street teams and whatnot, this is people laying out cash.
Yes.
I would think as an A&R guy, I'd want to look at your data with some unfamiliar artists and say, maybe I should be looking at that person.
That's exactly why we're formalizing, as I mentioned earlier, around South by Southwest, an emerging artist strategy. People need to be paying attention. The trade, booking agents, managers, labels, we're creating a leaderboard of our unsigned artists, for this month, this week, this year. What unsigned artists have driven the most revenue. We're going to have a leaderboard. So we do think there's value in that to the trade. We also think there's value in that within PledgeMusic too. We have the ambition at some point in the future to be a walled garden where an artist can come to us and never leave. We can get to your core fans, we can drive a lot of revenue, we can help monetize and grow your live business, we can drive your day-to-day D2C store. And by the way, If we put the right ecosystem of marketing and promotion teams around the company, we can also market and promote your record, and we can help get you distributed across all the digital platforms. So we think at some point in the future we'll be able to be a walled garden where an artist can come in and never really have to leave and retain their rights.
Would PledgeMusic be a way of eliminating scalpers for concert tickets?
Possibly. I think that we're in the middle of trying to figure this out now. We did a Rob Zombie tour last year, which was clunky, but it worked. Most artists get a percentage of the house, no matter who the promoting company is. Very few take advantage of it. So we are working right now with Ticketmaster to become their definition is we need to become a fan club driven infrastructure to do that. We actually can position ourselves that way, campaign to campaign. But to answer your question more directly, yes, because we would love to talk to a Willie Nelson to say, you get 10% of the house. Let's bring that to your fans. Let us facilitate that for you and obliterate all those fees that a Ticketmaster charges for your piece of the house, and your fans will love you for it.
That's great.
So we're working through that now.
Anybody have any spontaneous questions? Gentleman in the back.
Benji Rogers mentioned about using the VR. What is the role of the VR in all of this? This is part of the reboot that you mentioned about in 2 weeks.
We view VR as being a great fan experience. So there's no specific strategic positioning of VR in our platform, but we've been approached by 2 VR companies to actually partner with them. I'm a little reluctant to do that because if we place the wrong bet, we want to be Switzerland. We want everyone to come do business with us. So we're not going to over-invest or index or align with 1 or 2 companies. But we think companies delivering VR experiences to the core fans of any of these artists would be a big win all the way around.
Anyone else? All right, so I'll go to some of the questions you submitted. Alyssa wanted to know, do you know what the inspiration for creating PledgeMusic was?
So Benji, touring musician, brilliant idea guy, he literally had the inspiration at a club. And he tells it much more eloquently than I will, but he was doing hand-to-hand combat every day after a gig out there trying to get email names. Let me give you this free CD sampler of my music. Here's an EP, here's a t-shirt, give me your information. And he had an epiphany one day, because he's a brilliant idea guy, that this should be happening online in a much more elegant way. What can I deliver to my fans they would really want? And then they would give me their data for it, then I can start communicating with them. And that was kind of the genesis of the whole thing.
Do you know who might have been the first artist that he signed up for Pledge?
That's a question I should know, but I embarrassingly don't have the answer
It's
to.
not embarrassing.
I've only been there since April. It's a 7-year-old company.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I'll throw it to you. Matt, want to know how have Noise Trade and Set FM changed Pledge?
It's strengthened us. It's strengthened us as an artist development and marketing company, because I describe the 3 companies as, if you view them as like the 3 corners of a triangle. You've got Set FM that can generate content very easily. You've got Noise Trade that can trade that content for data. And then you've got PledgeMusic, that's the top of the triangle, that is the real revenue generator. So when those 3 companies start, I almost look at like, if you look at atoms kind of pivoting off each other in the center of that triangle, that's when we're going to be great. We're not there yet. We're still absorbing those companies. We have a strategy. We're going to be talking about that in Austin. But it's really important, because when we really, that's really the whole logic behind this emerging artist, and this PledgeMusic Amplify emerging artist strategy, is to really harness those 3 platforms together to help grow your career.
So Victoria wanted to know if you were able to get any well-known artist to become part of PledgeMusic, who would you want
Kanye West.
and why?
Because Kanye is, I think he would be able to look at our platform abstractly and actually create in it. to me, the end game for this is we are a creative platform. He can iterate on a record, he can iterate on merch, he can introduce crazy off-the-wall ideas and items in here, and I think could use this as a playground in a way that he can't do anywhere else. I walk by his boutique in Soho every day on the way to my office on Canal Street, and I think to myself every day, you're leaving money on the table. You're going for the white glove experience as opposed to the everyman experience. You can do what you want, and by the way, this conversation will happen with his manager. Once we get through the next couple of weeks, I really want them to feel like the platform is, I describe this as like we went from a newborn to a toddler, we've been an adolescent, now we're going to grow to be an adult. So when we're an adult later this year, then I'm going to feel much more comfortable speaking to a guy like Izzy who manages Kanye to say, we need to have a conversation about this because he can realize his creative vision in a way he can't anyplace else. He's doing it in compartments around the world, but he's not doing it unilaterally like he can with us.
So you guys heard it here first. Come the end of the year, you might find Kanye up there. What's this? So Fatima, want to know if you think, I think you kind of answered this, but do you think that PledgeMusic might potentially erase the need for a label, record label?
I think I personally believe there will always be a need for a label if the labels are smart, if they're great marketing and promotion engines and they're leveraging their relationships and their roster to get artists exposed. But I do think we will be an amazing alternate option that can deliver as much, if not more. And as we mature, that kill shot could be there at some point. We don't have the ambition for that. We think there's always going to be a place for labels, but I think we have the ability to service artists in a way that a label could as we grow.
One of these questions, and this is from Nathaniel. Have you found your college education to be beneficial in your current line of work?
Yes, that's a great question. I have two kids, they're 16 and 13, and I tell them every day, I said, I don't care what you do what you love. For me, I was an English major, and I didn't go in to that, commitment because I wanted to learn about or be a teacher. English was about communication to me. How can I be a better communicator? I love to read. So I weave what I learned in that major every day into what I do for a living. It's communicating, it's selling people on, here's what I think this piece of literature or this poet had intended to say with this piece. Here's my interpretation of why PledgeMusic is great for you as an artist. So I apply that same methodology from being an English major to every day. That's what I do.
Can you talk a little bit about blockchaining?
Not at all. No, I can. I would do it a disservice. I'd be doing a disservice to Benji. It's unrelated to PledgeMusic. We will probably use blockchain, but it's not related to PledgeMusic, despite Benji's involvement.
Jessica, I want to know, what would you say generates the most revenue for PledgeMusic?
About 20% of our revenue is experiences. I'm going to get a little esoteric on everyone right now, but I really believe that as we move more squarely into the digital age, there's going to be more of an appetite for tactile and experiential relationships to artists. As I said earlier, if you're a casual fan, clicking play is fine. If you're a real passionate fan of an artist, you want to feel that vinyl in your hand, you want to go see them live, you want to have a chance to interact with them. The general marketplace does not provide that. So I really believe as time goes on, there'll be more of a need and appetite for that type of relationship because it's disappearing. So we facilitate that.
Sir.
What would you say is the perfect mix of offerings for an artist on PledgeMusic?
I'd say it's probably 25-30% of your campaign are things that we think every artist should have, like test pressings and bundles with the right merch items, etc. It's probably so call that 30%. A third, a third, and a third. I'll make it easy. A third would be the things we know every artist should do because they generate revenue. A third would be things that are a real true reflection of who they are outside, either tied to the project or outside the project. If you draw, if you like photography, like how do your fans get closer to you as a human being and as an artist? and a third would be just really off the wall things, like crazy things. I don't think we do enough of that, honestly. You know, I think we need to have like just crazy, like put something in there for $1 million. Like, what would you sell? What would you do for $1 million? It would be a press story. And by the way, maybe we'd encourage you to go do it for nothing as a goof. You know, like I'll go play in front. I'll busk in front of a McDonald's if someone paid me $1 million to do that. Well, then just go do it, and we'll have a publicist there, and we'll be a news story. So I think I like the idea of like capturing the imagination of what an artist can be and what the fan might want from them, and that should be a third of every campaign.
Some question here alludes to the global market. In other words, I know you have UK stuff, but is there expansion beyond, English language?
Yeah, we have we have people in France and Germany. We have people around the world actually. We don't have a beachhead in the Far East yet or South America. We ship to everywhere around the world. I do think Japan and the Middle East and South America are going to be frontiers for us this year, though.
All right. I hope I don't butcher your name here. Tahita wanted to know what are some of the advantages of being a CEO of a company whose founder is still an active member of the company.
It's a blessing. Benji and I are very close, and that's a great question. Whenever go back to a point I made earlier, the blue ocean, the idea of PledgeMusic is the thing. And every time we have this debate internally, a lot of the people in the company want, well, we should be this, we should be that. We have to be the best PledgeMusic we can be because no one else does what we do. So we have to be great at being PledgeMusic. And every time there's a jump ball on a strategy question, I always go to Benji and say, I want to run this past you. Like, what do you think? Is this true to the ethos? Is this true to the original idea? Because that is the fairy dust in this whole thing.
Several people ask a similar question, want to know what are there competitors on the horizon or other companies that might be a threat to your business?
Yeah, there are a lot of companies that do variations of what we do. Shopify, Music Glue, even Bravado. Companies that have rights, that have D2C platforms. There's really no one doing what we do in this kind of marketplace fashion. Could someone evolve into that? Absolutely. That's why we're always trying to stay ahead by strategically kind of redefining ourselves without losing the purity of PledgeMusic.
Kaylee wanted to know what would you say are some of the biggest successes PledgeMusic and has helped in building a band and making it more well-known, an artist?
There's an artist in the UK called Elf Kid that we have a relationship with PRS, which is a publishing mechanical society in the UK. We do developing artist showcases with them. Elf Kid is an act that came onto the platform, hip-hop, that we basically nurtured from day one, helped build a big following, had him play the showcase, and then there were 6 labels that were courting him. And he actually did sign to a label. He could have chosen to do that or not, no right or wrong answer, but that's an example of an artist that I think we really helped nurture. You go to the opposite end of the spectrum, I keep talking about Melissa Etheridge just because of a recent campaign. We were 24% of our first week sales for chart positioning and 66% of revenue the first week. So if we were not involved in that project, she would have had a much lower chart position and would have made a lot less money than she did with, by working with us.
So she just left, if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been Island, and so now she's doing her own thing. Well, actually, no, wait, she went with Concord. She did the Stax album. So from a career point of view, while I guess the charts may not reflect it, but financially she's doing better than ever before.
Yes.
So it's like almost like you're doing stuff that's under the radar that other than the beneficiaries of the actual artists and musicians, the public at large might not see. Kevin wanted to know what you think is the most important thing for a startup to keep in mind in the music business. Interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I think it's, I go back to a point I made earlier. I think it's think about problem solving. That's what Spotify did, right? I think that's what we do. I think you have to think about what problem exists, what challenge exists in the marketplace for the fan or the artist that you can help solve. And if you're an also-ran in the startup space, it's not a good place to be. But if you find that idea that solves or addresses a need or a problem, then you've got a real lane.
Sir.
Do you like have a sales staff and people who are actively going out and pitching? I'm trying to think. There's a management company out based in LA who represent, for example, Jefferson Airplane and the estates of
Jan Paul.
Jim Morrison. Pardon me?
Jan Paul.
Yeah. Like going out to them,
Yep.
knowing that, because when you bring up Melissa Etheridge, she's the kind of artist who, Steve is a big proponent of radio. Nobody cares necessarily from the mass angle when Melissa Etheridge puts something out, but the super fans are the ones who are going to care.
Yep.
So it's almost like there's the gold mine, there's the sweet spot, right?
Yeah, we have an artist and label relations team that does that very role. They play offense, they educate the trade on what we do. I was with Jan Paul actually 2 weeks ago in LA. So we're launching a Ramones thing with him. So we have a team that educates and brings the business in. So our process is the artist and label relations team plays offense. We then bring the project in, gets handed off to a campaign manager that then sits on top of the project, really refines it, and then drives it every day. Our marketing team helps market the project, and that's kind of the three core functions of the company.
Any guys have any questions you want to ask? Okay,
Can I ask a question?
of course.
What would you want to see as a fan? Like if you think about, I did this exercise with what company I ran a couple of years ago. I said, I put the challenge out to say, I want everyone here to think like a fan for their favorite artist and go across the marketplace. Are you getting what you need? Are you getting what you want from your favorite artist? And they had to fill out a questionnaire. And by and large, the answer was no. So I just want to throw that question out there. Like, you see what we do. And by the way, I don't have rose-colored glasses. We have a lot of problems. We have warts. We have issues. We have product issues. We have development challenges. We need more people. But there's no rule book here either. So every day we ask ourselves, how can we be better? So I would throw that out as fans. Like, what would you want to see from your artist? What type of relationship would you like to have from the artist you're really passionate about?
Bueller? Anyone? Go ahead, back.
I say, I don't know if it's particular to my specific artist, but I think mostly shows near me, because it feels like whenever there's a show, it's always across the country, or it's like, it sells out really quickly and I have to wait like a year for them to come back to the East Coast, so I think it's shows probably.
That's a great answer.
Something that I think would be unique is like you meet up with the artist, but also the artist kind of like shows you like their own little tricks of their trade, and like, and potentially like if you could use that towards your own music, I think that would be really interesting.
That's a cool idea.
Mine would be just like a one-on-one thing. Like I seen on that artist that you're cool with,
Mhm.
or whatever. Sorry, don't remember her name, but she had like a Skype call
Mhm.
for like 30 minutes, and it's like for $500. But that's something I would invest in.
Right.
My favorite artist is Kanye West, so I don't know. It's not gonna be $500, but I know.
Help me, start pinging at social saying, you got to do a pledge campaign, Kanye.
But yeah, like one-on-one interaction is very key to me. Like I don't even care about anything else. I care about live performance, concerts, and I care about actually like seeing the artist. Like anything else really doesn't matter. Personally, as a fan.
There's an idea that I'm kicking around right now that I want to try and pull off before the end of the year, which is we have this database and we can actually geo-target. So I can tell you that there are 3,800 people in a 50-mile radius of Nashville that have pledged campaigns. We can speak to just those people. So we want to pick the right artist or artists to do pop-up shows. So let's pick any random artist. We're going to pick these 5 cities and just carpet bomb the names that we have in our database saying this artist is coming to your town. pre-order your ticket. That's going to come with a T-shirt and a handwritten set list signed by the artist. We're going to tell you where the show is going to be 24 hours before. I think we would sell those out like that and have them doing like really funky placement. It might be a bowling alley. It shouldn't be like a standard club you've seen a million times. Like, do something really fun and different and exciting. It becomes a press story. And then we can just replicate that for other artists in other cities. Like, we can actually advance the show, to your point about wanting an artist in your town. We can even say, put a note out to your fan base and say, we're taking votes. What city do you want us to come to? Whatever city gets the most votes or the top 5 get the show. You know, fans can do that with us. We can facilitate all of that. So that hopefully this year we'll get our arms around that. I got to get by South by, but that's something I really want to try and do this year.
So dovetails in the question that Muna asked was, can Pledge Music help me book shows anywhere?
Well, yeah, that is kind of a variation of the you know,
Right.
I guess I answered that a bit. We did work with AG Nashville last year. They had an artist, and maybe this answers your question, but they had an artist that they booked in a venue because the artist was getting a hit record. Actually, the last artist I had signed to Caroline Ben Rector before I left had a hit. And they took a chance on booking him in a much bigger room in Nashville than he ever played before, and they suddenly were panicking a week out because they were undersold. So I happened to be in the head of AG Nashville's office at the time, and I said, look, I know Ben, let's call his manager. Let us actually go out to our fans, and I quoted Nashville because I remember the Ben Rector example. We can actually push a Ben Rector activation. So come to see the show. Ben will meet you after the show, or you get to go to see Soundcheck, or you get an exclusive T-shirt, or he'll handwrite a set list for you. So we were able to drop a whole overlay of a Pledge Music campaign to help shine a light on the fact that he was coming to this room, and they wound up selling the room out. So we can help that way too, because we really geo-targeted that offering.
That's pretty amazing.
From a lot of the people in the room are DIY artists. So from a DIY artist perspective who aren't at this size, the geo-targeting, for example, is that a potential revenue stream in the future for certain artists that will either, besides the 15% you're getting, but will pay you a flat fee for you guys to promote this show in this
I think
area?
in time that will be an upsell we'll do. We're not ready yet, but I think in time we'll have that. We'll have, you want distribution, we can switch that on for you. Do you want a radio promotion guy? Here's people you can talk to. Well, we want to get to that point. We're not there yet, but.
Is Muna here?
Yes, right.
So Muna, just to educate everybody in the room, can you explain what the Ryan Leslie self-built app is for Superphone?
So I never knew what Pledge Music was before I did this assignment. So this reminded me of his idea of Superphone. I don't know if you've heard of it, have you?
I have, because he and Benji are very close.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So that
In fact,
gives
Benji's doing a Q&A with him at Berkeley School of Music tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of basically the same thing almost,
Yeah.
except it's with a phone.
Yeah.
Texting.
Yeah.
Oh wait, you guys want to know what it is? Sorry. So it's basically an app where he gives out his phone number, and right when you text the number, a link is sent to you with to buy his album, basically. So to even have a conversation with him at all, you need to buy the album first, and then a bunch of he has a lot of other things, you can have a one-on-one phone call with him, but everything costs money, of course. It's similar to this.
Yeah.
But it's just for that artist.
Yeah, it's just for him.
Yeah, just for him. This
Yeah.
is an array of a lot of different artists. Samantha, I want to know, who are your music influences in the music industry? Who's made an impact on you in your career?
In terms of executives, Mr. Leeds, of course. The guy that I'd say, I always go for your gut instinct answer, but the guy that I still, and I'm very close with to this day, is Jason Flom. Jason Flom is a brilliant record guy, discovered Katy Perry, discovered countless acts over the years. Lord is altruistic, is a human being, has the right kind of sensibility to do the right thing for the artist, but also be smart enough and business savvy enough to protect the business. And reconciling those two things is very difficult, and people get lost on either side of that conversation. So he really is the guy that, if I could model my career after a guy, if I can get to, 10,000 feet of his 30,000 feet altitude, I would be very happy with my career.
Okay. He's the man responsible for identifying Twisted Sister.
Correct.
Christina wanted to know, how do you get artists who are famous and have already had careers and have been around for a while to join Pledge?
Because they're fed up more than anybody. They've been
So
through
they're
the,
easier
they've,
than the
well,
artists?
in some ways they are, because and these artists maybe don't get, maybe they're used to a different economic structure from labels, which they're not getting anymore. They've seen regime after regime after regime and turnover at companies, and their guy one day that was their champion is gone, and there's another guy that doesn't get what they do. So it's an easier conversation because we say, look, we're about your core fans, and we'll help you get more fans, but let us get to your core fans and we can do it better than anybody else. And that becomes pretty undeniable when they see it.
This is from Janice. She wanted to know, since you see a lot of rising, aspiring artists, what would you advise a new artist to avoid?
Not being true to themselves. I think an artist more than ever is getting external pressure to be something or position themselves in a way that they're not totally comfortable in. And in the world we live in now, people's bullshit meters are so sensitive that it's transparent. You'll be caught if you're not authentic. Just be authentic to who you are, because no matter who you are as an artist, you're not going to be better at being someone else. You're going to be better at being a better you. And I think a lot of artists get especially impressionable artists that are seduced by, what they think is opportunity, can be derailed by that pressure.
Let's see. Ray wanted to know, does it concern you when you see platforms such as SoundCloud having financial problems?
Yes and no. I think that business is tough. I think that there are always challenges out there, and you do need good business minds to grow any company, whether it's in the music business or not. It really does sting me when a great idea stumbles because it was not run properly. Because the idea is the thing, and if you have the wrong people around the idea, that's bad. And in fact, a friend of mine who runs a big investment fund said that to me. He goes, my mental checklist is, people first, idea second. Because you can have a brilliant idea, and then you meet the people around it. If it's not the right people, he goes, I'm out. I'm not putting a dime in. He goes, you can have a pretty good idea, and if the right people are attached to it, I'm going to place my bet on that. So I think that's really the key when it comes to any music tech platform. That's no editorial on SoundCloud, by the way, just as a general bit of feedback.
I think you kind of touched on this, but Jalissa wanted to know what's involved in starting a campaign on PledgeMusic. How does one go about starting that?
Yeah, the acquisitions people educate, they start to get their arms around what a campaign suite would look like. Then the campaign manager will really refine that, and then when it's in play, then we're always on top of it, understanding what items can be introduced, how do we push pricing, what should we scale back on, what should we position at the top of the page. So it's kind of a living, breathing thing when a campaign's up.
And Tatiana said, are you allowed to run a campaign that includes samples, cover songs, or remixes, since you're not the owner of the song?
Yeah, we pay mechanicals, so.
So it could be done.
Yeah. We have Joan Osborne's doing a Bob Dylan tribute record right now, as one example. That campaign's active.
And that'll be exclusive to...
That is not, well, they're working on getting a deal for her right now. But the Bare Naked Ladies record we're doing is exclusive to us. That's a doo-wop record.
So Pledge could become a competitor in a certain way.
I think we could. I'm reluctant to go there because, again, we want
Right.
to be in business with everyone. Let's get amazing proof of concept, then we'll figure out if we launch Pledge Records at some point.
Let's see, Jessica wanted to know what generates the most revenue for Pledge?
Again, experiences are about 20%. The highest ticket items are experiences. We sold a $60,000 house concert in October for an act. So the highest ticket items are like that type of thing.
You and I talked about this before. and Stephanie brings it up, is that some obstacles in working with the major labels. I mean, I guess in a lot of cases, it's an education process.
I suffered from it. You know, when I first went into, you know, talk about the opportunity, I first was embarrassed. I didn't know much about PledgeMusic. I'm like, I'm in this meeting and like, no one ever called me from PledgeMusic to talk about that. I mean that lovingly to Benji, who was, you know, dealing with a lot of stuff. And then I got angry. Then I'm like, how come no one called me? Like, we could have done $500,000 on Five-Figure Death Punch like that. You know, that's kind of the fire I brought into the company. Like, guys, we need to have religion about this place. Like, this place is great. People need to know about it.
So before this assignment and you became aware of our guest tonight, how many of you had heard of PledgeMusic before?
That's way more than I anticipated, honestly, which is great.
So with no advertising, and it's all word of mouth or artist page links. Let's see, we talked about the global, so that question's been answered. Oh. What's the most valuable experience from previous jobs that has been helpful to you at Pledge?
Crisis management. You know, this is one of the things that I think is, for any of you that really have ambition to work with creatives, they're not normal human beings. They're creative and they have something switched on inside of them that allows them to communicate in a way that most people like us can't. But oftentimes it compromises other parts of who they are. It's the human nature, right? And I think a lot of people in this business, anybody that works with creative people, can get really frustrated by that. But I think, again, I use that word empathy. I think understanding the motivations of whomever you're, you know, dealing with in a crisis with, an artist, or it could be in any business, but understanding the root of what the issue is. Why are they so upset about this issue? Why is this so important to them? It informs much better decisions where both sides feel better about the outcome. So especially working with the creatives, you've got to be really patient, you have to be very insightful, and you have to understand that, you know, oftentimes you can't expect them to see the world through the same lens that you do as a non-creative person. There are many creative people in here too, so you may understand that. But I think that's a really, and I mentioned Jason again. Jason's the guy who got that very early on in his career and connects with artists in a way unlike I've seen with anybody. I didn't know Ahmet Ertegun. He was probably that guy too. But I think that's really important for anybody in the creative space.
Jason is the guy who, when he got Katie's first album, said there's no hits. He made her go back and put I Kissed a Girl on the record.
Yep.
Without him, that would not, that campaign might not have worked.
Steve.
Sure.
Another question about dealing with people. When you were working on the Weird Al project, you mentioned that the label wasn't going for it, so you did an end around and went to management. When do you decide to do something like that? Because you're obviously, at some point, upsetting somebody by doing that. So can you talk about kind of what's going through your mind and when you feel the right time is to do something like that, with the concern being burning bridges and things like that? Just
Yeah.
sort of a management thought.
It's kind of like Survivor. You build an alliance. You know, it's like you got to build a team where if you get enough consensus in the room, and sometimes you need to do that privately, because you know it's the right thing to do. If you get enough consensus, then you know, then you also have to understand who you're trying to convince and what their motivation is. In this case, Sony just never done it before, and we have so much data that proves it would work, that proved it would work. They were still so, yes, but it's risky and it's Weird Al. And so we said, you know what, let's get the manager on board and show him the data. So then we'll go arm in arm, saying now it's the company that's facilitating and the manager saying we should try this. Sony had to acquiesce. It wasn't adversarial. We just said, give us the benefit of the doubt. What do you have to lose? And now, not only did they not lose, in 6 hours they were gone. So, you know, we're not gloating about that. We're like, we know how to do this. Give us the benefit of the doubt. We'll go be great for you.
And also knowing knowing some of the individuals involved. I mean, Al's manager is a very savvy guy, and I'm sure as soon as you showed him the opportunity, he jumped at it and said, "We got to convince these Sony people."
Yep.
Al's been through the mill with a lot of different labels.
Yep.
It started with, I guess, TK Records put out the first, or the second record.
I'm too young to remember that.
Well, he started in college radio. He
Yes.
recorded his first single at the college radio station. That's how Weird Al started his career. Does anybody else have any queries here? Because a lot of these questions are similar, and then a lot of them, I hope you guys do a little better research. It was asking him how did he come up with the idea, and I think that he's made it clear it wasn't his idea. He bought into someone else's idea. So I'm just wondering if any of you have any enlightened new questions based upon some of the discussions here. You again, yes,
Sorry.
sir. No, it's good.
In terms of merch, what specific types of merch sell best for you? And even as specifically as if you say shirts, like autograph shirts or three-quarter sleeve shirts or T-shirts or...
It's going to sound like a really wimpy answer, but it depends. Patches are really hot right now. Sew-on patches. Things like, turntable mats. We did a leather embossed turntable mat for a project last year that we had procured for the artist. We did a box set last year for another artist. We know that we can make 1,000 turntable mats for $1.50. The perceived consumer value, they're willing to pay $20 for it. We popped that into a campaign around a box set, and it became one of our hottest selling items last year because that turntable mat was part of it, and there was $18.50 in margin, minus our fee to that rights holder. So when you do 50,000 campaigns, you get a real sense of, based on the type of project it is, the genre, the artist, what the appetite for merch is. But the overgeneralized answer is, for some reason, patches right now are like red hot. We try and throw in patch in every release because it costs nothing to make, but fans will pay for it because it's cool, especially if it's a cool design.
Inexpensive to ship.
Yep, and you can customize. You can put a patch on anything and anywhere you want it, and it looks cool. Not a mass-produced thing.
I'm fascinated by the staff you must have to have, because you create all these unique merch items. So you have to have somebody out there who actually can go source out a patch maker, a T-shirt maker, a turntable mat. I mean, is there one person, or do you have a team of people that?
I have one savant on the team who does a lot of that, and I've worked with him in different companies over the years. He's brilliant. He's stark raving mad, but he's brilliant, and and he's the guy that unlocks a lot of revenue and creativity in these campaigns.
It's an important role.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
easy, sir.
When you have these campaigns, do the artists come in with their own merch, or they outsource it through your company?
One or the other, or both. We take in their existing merch. We'll tell them what we think they should make. We can help procure it for them. So it's kind of a dialogue.
Yes.
This is more of a personal question. For someone who is very behind on social media, should we get the social media in check first before coming to Pledge?
Yeah, I mean that's certainly a gating item, but it's not about numbers. It's about engagement. As I said earlier, you can have 500 fans, but if every time you put something up, 200 people like it, we're good. If you have 50,000 fans and every time you post something, 25 people like it, that's not good. So it's about engagement, not about numbers.
In the back.
I was gonna say, how does your audience, how do you work with that? Because it seems as though that PledgeMusic is a relatively new concept that would be directed towards our demographic, but at the same time you have artists like Willie Nelson and prices that we probably couldn't afford, whereas your audience could be older people, 30s, 40s. So how do you reach both of them? How does that work exactly?
We try and we're not a commodity business where every campaign is customized. It's a white glove campaign. So we customize pricing. We try and understand who the fan is, what their pricing appetite is. Is there more room? Is there less room? Do we need to have lower priced items in there? So, and then when the campaign's active, we'll push the envelope. Like Lindsay Sterling, who some of you may know, she's a YouTube star, billion YouTube streams, unorthodox artist, instrumentalist. Anyway, she was really concerned her fans would not want to spend more than $300 on anything. And we got into this campaign, which wound up being 14% of first week sales and 51% of first week revenue. It was a very successful campaign. And about maybe 6 weeks into it, we started pushing her, saying, look, we think your most expensive items sold out like that. Introduce higher items. So we pushed her to introduce signed violins, which we sold for $1,500. We sold 8 of them in a week. And she did not think her fans would go there. There was no risk to her because if you didn't sell them, she didn't have to buy them. She bought them at cost when she needed to. So, and those fans were thrilled because they got a signed Lindsey Sterling violin with her new record. You know, so here's a fan that we gave him a way to spend more to feel closer to that artist as opposed to just going to download it on iTunes or streaming it, and they did.
It seems such a brilliant idea to be able to monetize your fans. I'm wondering if there have been cases or are there artists that perhaps don't fit and that their fan base is not such that they spend money and they're just looking to get by with the music, if that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a glass ceiling or floor. There are campaigns that we thought would do much better and did not. I gave an example without naming the artist earlier that was like, how is this not, this number barely has a comment, and how's this possible? And then conversely, there are artists that just surprise you because they're so good at understanding that fan base and speaking to them. It's that relationship that's the thing. So it's unpredictable in many ways. Like I said, I never would have predicted Weird Al.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the record's not coming out, the box set, not until November.
Correct.
So good 6-7 months. Yes, ma'am.
Earlier you spoke about like Ticketmaster, that you were trying to do something with them. What are the specifics about that? Because like, would you be included like with VIP packages and like things?
Well, there's a 36-point checklist that I have to get through to answer that question, literally. Broadly, we have to define ourselves, and there's certain ways that they define fan club. And there's certain ways that you have to interact with fans to define yourself. You don't have to call it a fan club, but you have to operate like one. So we are, I believe, 85%, within 85% of meeting their requirements. I think with a little massaging will be good. So it's very complicated on their rules and regulations. But I think we can address them.
And I have another one. Earlier in the beginning, you talked about how you decided to like work for Pledge. There were 3 things. Can you repeat those?
Yeah, my own personal checklist was, who do I want to be in the foxhole with? I wanted to be with people I could trust and knew had my back and had air cover. Number 2, can I learn something / build something? I found in my career at this point, I really like building stuff. So that was it checked that box for me. And the third piece for me is would I do it for nothing? I mean, I have to earn a living, but like I want to get up every day loving what I do. I don't like what I have to do sometimes, but I love what I do. And that maybe is the most important of those 3 checklists. That was my own process, but really, really important for me to do. And I had other things in front of me. I went through that checklist, and some hit 2, some hit 1, some hit 2.5, and I'm like, it's close, and this one checked all 3.
Anyone else? Or we're all Pledge Music experts?
We need interns.
I was just going to ask you about
I'm just saying. We need interns desperately.
And what's the process of applying to be a Pledge Music intern? Is there a website they got to go to? Do they email somebody in particular?
Yes, I can give you an email address you can circulate.
Great.
And it's not a passive internship. Our interns are building mock campaigns. You know, we had artists performing today in the building, and they help set up all the recording equipment, all the photo equipment and everything for it. So it's not a passive internship. We're on Canal Street in Manhattan, but we need bodies.
Is it paid?
It is paid.
So if any of you are intrigued by this, willing to go into Manhattan and get involved with something that's sounds like it's going to do pretty well, sounds like an interesting opportunity. If there are no more questions, then I think we should give our guest a little round of applause for giving up his evening.